What's up, Teddy Roosevelt?
Not much. Peanut butter and Janual. We're so stupid.
It happened.
I know, man. How's your week been?
Man, it's been good. It's a long one, but hey, we're getting there. It's almost Friday.
Yeah, man. Well, guess what? You
What's
ready to
up?
build a bar?
Let's do it. All right. So tonight on this episode of Let's Build a Bar,
Or building a bar?
building a bar. Don't judge me. Um, what are you bringing to the table tonight?
All right. So I have a what I think is a really good pick tonight. And I'll go ahead and share it with you, and then we can go ahead and get into the questions because there's a lot behind this bottle for me, and there's a lot of history behind it. But what I'm bringing to the bar tonight is Yellowstone Select, which is made by my good friends at Limestone Branch Distillery. That's what I'm bringing to the bar tonight. That's what you should put on your bar next.
All right. Well, I think that I will. But before we do any of that, I'll drink to that.
I'll drink to that.
So, talk about how good this is. Why should this bottle be on anybody's bar?
Okay, so this is episode number 3, and the first 2 episodes we brought to the table a brand that comes from like a legacy distillery, so one of the big boy distilleries. Episode 1 was Evan Williams Bottled and Bond. It comes from Heaven Hill, which is one of the big boys. It's one of the biggest producers of bourbon. Last week we brought George Dickel. Even though it isn't a bourbon, it's a Tennessee whiskey, but it comes from one of the biggest distilleries in Tennessee. So as far as Tennessee whiskey is concerned, it's one of the big boys. So I thought tonight we would bring this Yellowstone Select because I want us to bring some variety to the bar and some just richness to the bar. And this isn't from one of those big boy legacy distilleries. This is from a craft distiller. And so I thought for our first episode, well, our third episode, but the first episode that we're actually bringing something craft to the table, and there's a few reasons why, and we'll get to those later. But I that's why I chose this bottle.
So, one of the things that I noticed is that you've said the word craft quite a bit.
Mhm.
What let's talk a little bit about what craft, like what does craft mean?
As early as you can remember, until probably 10, 15 years ago, you had the big legacy brands. You had Four Roses, you had Jim Beam, you had Wild Turkey, you had Heaven Hill, you had all these brands that made basically a bottom shelf, a mid shelf, and a top shelf bourbon. So you had kind of 3 to choose from. Well, the theory is, and we could argue about this, but the theory is that what craft distilleries are doing now is they're the innovators. So they come in and they're the ones. What sets them apart from the big boys is they can't make a product at the price point that, say, Jim Beam can, because Jim Beam's buying thousands of tons of, grain, and they make it at such a scale that they can put it out fairly cheaply. The craft distilleries can't do that, but what they bring to the table is innovation. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the main reasons I chose this as the first craft product that we're going to put on our bar is because Limestone Branch they go a step above what most craft distilleries. So they have, the Yellowstone product, and they have a few other products, but one of the things that they do that I like, and I have this bottle here with me as well. So they take innovation one step further. So if you go visit their distillery, they have a small rick house out to the side of their distillery. It's actually just a trailer, and they put 10-gallon, I think it's 10 or 15-gallon barrels in there. And what they do is each barrel is a completely different mash bill. It's different recipes. It's different wood. It's different. I mean, they do all these, they have hundreds of experiments out in this rick house. And what they do is they'll bring them in, bottle them, and they sell them in their gift shop. So what's interesting about that is you go to their gift shop, you go to the distillery, and you're going to be able to pick up something relatively cheap. I think it's $25 for this bottle right here. And it's something you'll never taste again. It's something that you probably never will see again. But what they do is they track all of this experimental stuff and what sells the best, what people comment on the best. Then they could take that and put on a larger scale, and do it that way. So what they're doing is basically the innovation. They're doing the groundwork of the innovation of the bourbon industry, and I mean craft distilleries. So once craft picks up on something like this is going to work, this 4-grain bourbon or this whatever bourbon, then the big boys say, okay, that worked for them. We're going to start making this on a mass scale. But what the big boys can't do is experiment with a lot of stuff because they make everything on such a massive scale. So that's why I picked this, because these guys are truly leading the game in this innovation with what they do with their small little rick house and their experimental bourbons. And it's not just bourbon. They do it with their, any of their whiskeys, their ryes and stuff, but they're on point with what they do.
Real quick before I move to the next question, in 30 seconds or less, I want you to explain to me, you had mentioned that they do different woods. I'm a sucker for different woods, peach wood, apple woods, the whole nine. Can you expand just for my personal use a little bit about the different woods?
Well, it'll be different. It'll be different woods. It all has to be oak. I mean, like for bourbon, it has to be oak, but what they'll do is they'll experiment with different char levels. They'll experiment with, it might be different woods, like, American oak versus French oak versus,
Okay.
so it's different woods like that, but they can afford to do that because it's on such a small scale. And then they know that they're going to be able to take that barrel and put it in their gift shop, and suckers like me will go in there every day and pick up a different bottle if it's a different expression. And so far I've probably picked up 4 or 5 of these since I've lived in Kentucky, and not one of them have I been disappointed in.
Well,
Um,
I'm a big fan of the French oak. Okay. So now that we've kind of gone over that, because that's very good information, I wish I lived closer to you, or it's probably better that I don't. But is there a tie to the Yellowstone brand and the Yellowstone National Park? Is there a thing there?
so I'm going to pull a Daniel and tell kind of a long story, and I hope it won't be too long, but yes, there is a tie to Yellowstone Park. And I'm going to kind of look over here at my notes, but in 1872, the brand was created in honor of the Yellowstone National Park. So the brand was created that way, and it was created by a guy named J.B. Dant. So if you're familiar with bourbon history, J.W. Dant, there's a bourbon out. There was a bourbon, a label named after J.W. Dant. His son J.B. Dant started this bourbon, right? So a lot of stuff happened. It even made it through Prohibition. It became a medicinal bourbon during Prohibition. The label got sold off to a couple of different places. Well, about 2010, one of these numbers are right. It's 2010 or 2015, but 2010, I think, is when Steve Beam opened up Limestone Branch Distillery. And between 2010 and 2015, he got the label back. So he purchased the label back. And what's cool about this story is he's a descendant of the Dant. So J.W. Dant, J.B. Dant, they were his grandfather. So he's brought the brand back to his family. And
have you ever had a dream that that you could you do you want you could do so you do you want him to do you so much you could do anything.
Lost my train of thought for a second, but a portion of every bottle that they sell, it goes to the National Park Conservation Association, which donates money to you know, the national parks. And so, yes, it not only has a tie, but now it also has like a full connection to the national parks.
I like that. That's something that I've never known, and I'm actually a very big fan of Yellowstone here at the shopette. They stay pretty in stock. I never knew that. Okay, what I'm about to say, I don't mean to be controversial or disrespectful or anything like that. However, I do have to play the devil's advocate on this.
Mm-hmm.
Would one view this specific thing a little bit gimmicky? And if not, why?
I don't think so, because like I said earlier, the original brand was in 1872 was created to honor that. So it wasn't necessarily like it wasn't gimmicky. Like, I don't know. I don't want to I don't want to get off on any kind of negativity about any brand, but nowadays all it takes is you to take somebody famous, attach them to your brand, and for sales or whatever, you could claim that that's gimmicky. You add a rock band or you add a country music star to your label, and so gimmicky that way. No, it was honestly made for and to honor that. And so, like I say, Steve Beam has taken that, and now he, like I say, he donates to this, portions of the proceeds to this. So it actually helps the national brand. So I don't think it's gimmicky at all. I don't think that at all.
So this would be kind of the equivalent, I guess, to like if someone were to name their bourbon and not to whatever, but Wounded Warrior Project. I mean,
Yeah.
the certain proceeds go to, okay, that makes sense. I like that. That's really cool.
Well, like your hat right now, you got the 10th Mountain. So that distillery is out in Colorado. I had the opportunity this summer to go out with my buddy Steve to film, and I mean, proceeds of every bottle they sell goes to that division. And so, that's not gimmicky either, because he is invested in that. So it's not like he's using their name to make a profit. He's, giving back to the community. He does a lot to help. So it's kind of the same, the same process, the same principle.
I love that. Anything that gives back, I'm all about it. So, okay. Say that one, we're wanting to give some proceeds to the Yellowstone National Park. What would be the mash bill that we would consume by giving said donation?
All right. So as we're going to talk a little bit later, because I know one of the questions you have for me is, what am I tasting? And you can tell I've been tasting quite a bit of this.
You don't know that. You don't know that.
But it's a very light whiskey. It's not harsh. It's very light. And so with that, they use a white heirloom corn. So it's a lot lighter in flavor and kind of in harshness, but the corn is 75%, 13% rye, 12% malted barley. So not too much of a difference in kind of a mainstream, but they do use that white heirloom corn. And to me, it's just gives a lighter flavor than that, dense kind of yellow corn or the bloody butcher corn that some people use. So it's just a lighter corn. So,
and I'm going to kind of go off track here for just a split second. I mean, I won't make it real quick. So when you say this white heirloom corn, it's a lighter whiskey, that, and I do want to clarify for the bourbon connoisseurs, they know a little bit about this, but for the newer folks, bourbon has a certain texture, a certain mouthfeel. So you're saying that this has a lighter sort of that mouthfeel, almost like a refreshing.
Sorry, I have to get a little more.
Oh yeah, listen, have another taste. I know that.
Yeah, it's when I say lighter, it's not like diet bourbon or anything, but it's just a lot smoother. It's just a very refreshing pour. I mean, honestly, and So I keep mentioning Steve Beam. So it's him and his brother Paul Beam that started this distillery, and so this is part of their grandfather, one of their grandfather's recipes. So this is kind of a family
Okay.
traditional
Yeah.
recipe, right?
So does this have any other expressions?
As I choke to death.
I'll wait.
So yes, this does have other expressions. This is the Yellowstone Select. So they also have a Yellowstone Select handpick series, which is the single barrel. Um, they've just come out with. I didn't really I didn't know about this, but I didn't kind of really put this together until. But they've come out recently with a Yellowstone Family Recipe limited release that came out in April of this year, and they also have a Yellowstone limited edition, which is 101 proof, and it's the same bourbon, but it's finished in Marsala Superior cask. So it's a finished bourbon. But yeah, so different expressions. So kind of like any other, this would be the flagship product of Limestone Branch. Then they
Right.
had a single barrel version, kind of they call it the family recipe limited, so it's a special version, and then they have their finished version, and so that's what they have right now. And
So
I learned just today they're coming out with a single malt, a Yellowstone single malt. So that's coming out in March of 2023. American single malt.
that is going to be phenomenal.
Yes, it is.
Um, Real quick, I want you to expand on what you mean by finished, because what I mean by finished is an empty bottle.
Well, it's kind of the same thing.
Oh,
So this is a practice that basically I would say, give or take a few years, it's a relatively new practice, say within, let's say, the past 20 years or so.
okay.
And what it's a controversial practice, because what you do is these distilleries, they take their bourbon. So they say they age their bourbon for 4 years, 6 years, 10 years, whatever it is. They'll dump it, and then they'll find another barrel. So it might be a wine barrel, a port barrel, a rum barrel, and then what they'll do is they'll put the bourbon that they just poured out of the barrel, they'll put it back in a barrel, and then for maybe 6 months or so they'll let it sit in that barrel. And so theoretically what that does is, say if it's a rum barrel, it supposedly, as it goes in and out, it pulls some of that rum, or that whatever it is, that it pulls some of that out of the wood and adds another note to the product. The reason it's controversial is, if you look up what the TTB says about bourbon, bourbon can't have anything added to it. It has to be straight distillate. It can't have anything added for flavor. It can't have anything added for color. It can't have anything added for anything. So it's white distillate that goes in the barrel. 4 years, 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 10 years later, when you dump it out of the barrel, it's going to come out an amber color, a brownish color, and that's 100% from the barrel. So you're not allowed to add anything to it. But people argue, and I'm on the side of arguing this, that when you put it in some other barrel, you put it in a rum barrel, you put it in a wine barrel, you put it in a tequila barrel, it's pulling some of that rum, that leftover tequila, and you're adding to the product. So I'm of the opinion that it should not be called bourbon once you do that. And I didn't want that to hijack the episode, but it's all part of it. So we can continue.
Look, I'm glad that you're the one that's keeping this pace. I'm terrible at this. So what would someone expect to pay for this bottle of unexploited bourbon?
Deliciousness.
Delicious.
So again, I always go to Booze App anytime I'm looking or whatever. And so Booze App puts this bottle between the average MSRP of about $37-ish and a fair price of about $45. So at this price point, it's certainly for a craft product, it's certainly affordable. And I do want to point out that, I talked a little bit earlier about it. The reason I chose this is because it's a craft product and it's different than, some of the legacy brands. But if you think about it, a legacy white label Jim Beam is going to cost you, 12 bucks, 15 bucks. A legacy Evan Williams product is going to cost you 12 or 15 bucks. So this is their flagship product, and it's going to run you 30 bucks or so, around 30, 35 bucks. But it's a good quality product, and it's
Look at what goes into it. Yeah.
yeah. And I do want to point out that when I say it's a craft distillery, it is a very craft distillery. It's a very small distillery, but they're owned by a company called Luxco. It's just a worldwide alcohol distribution alcohol company. And so, what that affords for a company like Limestone Branch is it affords them kind of, I don't know if worldwide is the right answer, but certainly distribution in places that they didn't have it before. So even though it's still a craft product, it still is, due to the fact that they're kind of owned by Luxco and distributed by them. So they have a lot further reach than probably they would if they had just stayed a self-owned family run company. So it's kind of from a consumer standpoint, I'm not going to speak to the distiller or the distillery standpoint, but from the consumer standpoint, it's the best of both worlds, because you still have the beauty of it being a craft distillery in that they get to kind of do all the innovation, but they also, the distribution of this is pretty far wide.
Well, so for the ones that are listening, I think that we have all the reasons that we need to have this on our bar. And to be honest with you, now that I'm hearing the more and more of it, I know that we talked about, one of the ones that we run out of to always go ahead and have restocked.
Right.
I think that you possibly have got me hooked on restocking this one.
Oh, for sure. You should.
So I will definitely continue to have this one stocked on my bar. I see a very expensive future, so that's fine. No, thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
And then I believe that we will call this one, and I'll have another toast with you on that.
Well, I need to tell you the tasting notes.
I didn't ask about the tasting notes.
I know you didn't.
What are the tasting notes?
So since I kind of, in the first part of this, we talked a little bit about it being a lighter whiskey. When you first kind of nose this, you're gonna get that smokiness, but when you taste it, at least for me, I get a lot of like light fruity notes on the front end. I get a lot of light spices, and as it gets kind of mid palate and goes towards the back, it gets a little bit sweeter, but it's got a little bit, for me, it's got like a little mid palate spice to it. So enough that it just gives a little bit of complexity and makes it interesting. So that's what you should. It's not going to be like the Evan Williams where it's just full, like punch you in the mouth, just full flavor, full force. It's a lighter whiskey, but it's definitely worth your money.
Okay. So I think that I told you that this is going to be something that I'm going to keep on my bar. So I'm in Kentucky, or you're in Kentucky, I'm in Arkansas. How hard is this bottle going to be to find?
Because of what I mentioned about it being in a partnership or being owned by Luxco or whatever, it shouldn't be hard to find. You should be able to find it pretty much anywhere. I'm not going to guarantee that because I do know when I lived in Tennessee, I could find it anywhere in Tennessee. Now that I'm in Kentucky, obviously I can find it anywhere in Kentucky, but I would assume that it's pretty easy to find. I will once again plug the fact though, if you come to Kentucky, go to Limestone Branch and you'll get something there that you won't get anywhere else. And I guarantee you, it'll be something that'll just blow you away. So with them, you get the best of both worlds. You get something that's pretty easy to find, and then you go to their distillery, you're guaranteed to get something that you won't get anywhere else.
Well, man, I appreciate you telling me about it. Again, I'm going to add this to my bar 100% for sure. And I'll drink to that.
I'll drink to that, man. If you like what you heard, check us out on these social media platforms. Just search for My Journey Through the American Spirits.